Bye.
Thank you.
Hi. Hi.
Hey, good.
Here.
Well, how you doing?
So I'm just going to try because I think today is. I'm sorry, I'm late. We were having a great discussion down there. It was not your fault. It was not your fault. You're looking well done.
So are you?
Thank you.
See, Rob, I'm happy to see you're willing to get on the whack there. I think you'll be a good addition.
Now we're like cohorts now, in a different kind of way as well.
That's good.
Okay. Coffee.
All right. I haven't heard it sold out. And usually I hear about that stuff, so it should be good. This and that. There's that you guys covered, so I don't. Exactly.
Glad that you are able to be with us.
Yeah, me too. We were doing that Wyoming Business Alliance. She'll be over in a bit. That was a good day.
Working you to death, huh?
Very impressive discussions about stuff.
Budget?
Did not know you were going to be very sick.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right. Okay, thank you.
So I didn't ask how often does the WAC board meet?
About they need the same general time commission.
Hi, Wayne. Okay, good. I need to talk to you about that. Yeah. You're not looking. Okay. It's underneath your desk. That's not good. Yeah.
Well,
Somewhere. Okay, I'm not worried.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Be around.
How's everything in Laramie? How's everything in Laramie?
Actually, it is.
Good. You just drive over?
Yeah. Remember you came to it last year?
Oh, right. Actually, more athletics than anything.
We'll have a variety of
Right, yeah.
morning education.
Wasn't that awesome?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Possibly at breakfast time we'll have.
That goes a long ways with the bubbles.
Oh, you know, it does. Yeah.
I
It is big. It is big. It's huge.
don't know who.
Anytime they have a winning season, they're doing really well.
It seems to float a lot of things.
Everybody's happy. I had a really good friend of mine took his daughter to her first football game Saturday night, and no, they went home because it was got cold. And she loved it. I mean, she thought it was so much fun. And then she kept saying, "And when are the Broncos playing again?" And he told them this Cowboys, but she doesn't mean anything to her. So she wanted to go play football that afternoon in the park. Yeah, it was 6. Yeah, it was so cute. Yeah, she thought that was. Yeah, I guess it's a lot better in person than it is on TV. Yeah, it is.
TV is really, that's what she's I have no comfortable. Says the time is travel, and I'm just get her more like I wake at 5 o'clock, 8 o'clock.
I know. No. 9 o'clock is. Is there 9 o'clock? Sweep it.
They have 2 wagons.
Oh, that's
They
great.
wanted to know if we want to restore it.
for them.
Oh.
I don't think we could get Rob Bennett or somebody with painting, all that stuff. What we talked about.
When it's
Tell me
kind
who
of,
to talk to
I
and
think
can
even
ask
that,
you
in
whatever
the
I
next,
can.
we'll see that
Talk to
change in
Carol
the
Nixon
next
to talk
Do you have a
to
number?
5 years, because it's scraping, you know?
I asked, yes. Okay. Okay.
ESPN, not the major channel.
Uh-huh.
Sure.
Just to do
Yeah,
the game.
that would be great.
So they are been dictating what time Saturday.
Because I don't know if we can even make one with shelter the sea wagon.
Mexico. Nobody knew the start of that game until
Yeah, but I mean, because they want to give us two.
yeah.
Okay, so I thought it'd be a good student project.
The game itself will start from.
Wow.
And then
Was
they
it
go-
LCCC, right?
Are you ready, Vicki? I want to apologize to everyone for being late, but we were having a very important conversation, a wrap up of the election of our bond issue. So I would like to call this meeting to order, November 8th. And could I have approval of the minutes, please?
Madam Chair, I move that we move and approve the October 18 board minutes.
Thank you. And Brenda seconded. Thank you very much. Reports to the board, staff. Rhonda, please.
Do we need to vote?
Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone not in favor, please say aye. It's unanimous, Vicki, sorry. Thank you, Brenda. Hi, Brenda. So everybody's approved now? You are on. Perfect.
Okay, short and sweet. Staff Senate, just a couple of things that we've been involved in. We had the new staff luncheon in October, so we're able to invite all the new staff that have joined us over the past year. And then the faculty and staff, we've been looking at opportunities to collaborate together. And so we had a social that we met after the Ken Bain speaking event that we had last Friday, and had a nice time to get together and just have some time off campus to socialize and get to know each other better. So looking to have more of those events in the future. Don't have as much on the calendar right now because we're excited to have a full staff Senate, and we're so excited. We've never had this before. We don't know how to act. And so it really feels like we need to do a little reorganizing and just kind of regrouping, and that's what we're doing. And so I expect that we'll have more news to share with you in the next month, or at least at the beginning of our next semester.
Rhonda, how many people are on a full staff Senate?
We have 12 voting members now. So we're excited about that, and we're still filling a couple of our executive officer positions, and we'll have those probably to announce to you within the next couple of weeks.
Great. Does anyone have any questions for Rhonda? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Faculty Senate, Nate.
Hey, Madam Chair, members of the board, good evening. Thank you once again for allowing me an opportunity to speak on behalf of Faculty Senate on sort of the comings and goings of what we're working on. Faculty Senate has identified 2 goals for this academic year. And so my update this evening will sort of give a goal and then sort of how we're meeting that thus far. So our first goal is to increase faculty interaction through social and collegial opportunities. One piece that Faculty Senate really has been working on is really getting faculty sort of out of those siloed schools, giving them opportunities to meet, to converse, to discuss pedagogy, and then also to just be social, right? I mean, we are people at the end of the day as well. And so giving those opportunities to leave the campus and maybe just have some informal conversations. As Rhonda mentioned, we've been working a lot with Staff Senate on those. Our goal is to hopefully have one a month, at least on the Faculty Senate side, to provide those opportunities. Additionally, we worked with CET, the Center for Excellence in Teaching, and with Dr. Harris on Ken Bain's visit. And as Rhonda said, that was last Friday. We sponsored a lunch with those 2 groups, and it was a great success. We had over 50 faculty. It was a very worthwhile conversation, and now our goal is to figure out how we take those thoughts that Mr. Bain introduced to us, and then how do we incorporate those, both individually as faculty and then ultimately as a Senate and as a group across campus. Our second goal is to increase representation and responsiveness to the faculty and administration. So we're very well aware as senators that Faculty Senate doesn't necessarily have, how do we say this, the greatest reputation over the last couple of years. And we want to work on that. We want to be known as a group that is responsive, that is proactive. And so ways in which we've been working on that providing minutes, agendas, being transparent with our constituents, whether that's faculty or administration. The other piece is serving on faculty or, college-wide committees, such as the calendar committee. So what does the academic calendar look like going forward? How might we be able to integrate some things that are student-friendly into the calendar? Additionally, working on the part-time position description, and then also working with the HR team on the classification and compensation communication plan, really providing our input. What are faculty questions at this point, right? If we can ask those questions early on, hopefully we can get them answered. And so the rollout, if you will, is positive for all involved. As Rhonda said, hopefully more to come. Our goal for the remainder of this semester is really to start looking at faculty and asking them, what do you want from us? What are your goals for us? And then how can we be proactive with you, whether that's pedagogy, whether that's social functions, whether that's collegial opportunities on campus and off campus.
Thank you. Any questions for Nate? Thank you very much for coming. Great. That's
Thank you.
good news you have for us. Thank you. President's report. Do you have anything, Dr. Schaefer?
Madam Chair, members of the board, just a welcome to Gay. Good to see you. Thanks for being here tonight. The only thing that I'll add, I actually don't want to spend a lot of time on the president's report because we do have quite a few things that we will spend time on. I just want to let you know that the reason we're having the board meeting tonight instead of next Wednesday is next Wednesday, the Pathways team, which includes Trustee Salazar, myself, Dr. Harris, Vice President Hay, and others, will be traveling back to DC for the first Pathways Institute. And so we will be leaving on the 15th and back on Saturday, and really looking forward to getting the Pathways work started. So look forward to a report, but know that Trustee Salazar will be making sure we're all in line and productive and working hard.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question? What's the Pathways? What is this? The Pathways Institute you're going to?
So the Madam Chair, Trustee Little, the Pathways Project, the ACC Pathways Project, and I think I've given a couple of presentations to the board on that over the past, is an initiative that we applied to and were accepted to be one of a select few schools that will be working with the American Association of Community Colleges, other pretty large entities such as the Lumina Foundation, the Aspen Institute, the Community College Research Center at Columbia, to essentially help us fully implement guided pathways. Guided pathways is a research-based, transformation of community colleges to really redesign our services, curriculum, and these pathways to help students be more successful. And so this is kind of our kickoff for that initiative.
Thank you for refreshing my memory.
We always need that, Brenda.
Good. So unless the board has questions for me, I really want to skip past the report and get into a couple of the next items.
Work items.
Perfect. And I'm going to go up to the podium for this one. I have Lucas Yostin with me here. He's going to help with some of this as well. Vicky said she had this all up.
She does.
Perfect. So I'll kind of try to go off of here. So you probably remember it's been 2 meetings ago that I walked you through sort of the comprehensive update of how the classification and compensation system at LCCC is taking shape. That was a follow-on from the conversation we had at your retreat this last summer. And so that's really coming together well. But I thought I would just do a quick recap of that model. So the classification piece we talked about, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time there. But part of the model is really clarifying and creating a structure in which we classify positions, both for FLSA, Fair Labor Standards Act, exempt versus non-exempt, but also within our employee categories. You recall we were adding one category. We used to have administrator, professional, classified, and faculty, and we're adding the managerial category in there, and really trying to clarify through the manual the process at which we would classify a new position, reconsider a position and its analysis and all that stuff. So classification moving pretty well, but I want to spend time on compensation and specifically getting your direction on how we phase in some of these processes. But as a refresher, so once we've classified a position, And we have the classification, which leads to job titling, and then if you remember, there's levels associated with the positions, so classified level 1, 2, 3, 4. Every position essentially ends up with a salary band. And so this salary band is essentially a market-driven band that says, for this position at this level, your market has a minimum threshold for salary or wages and a maximum threshold for salary or wages. So one of the things in your draft policy statement is we wanted to be an employer of choice and we wanted to be competitive in the way we compensate people. Mm-hmm. So as you recall at the last presentation, so our target is to have our people, our positions starting at 25th percentile of that salary band. That's our target. Your policy statement also says we want to have some aspect of longevity consideration in it for employees. So based on their tenure, if you will, at the institution, we want to see their compensation move. And so we've built in longevity increments. So essentially, over the first 5 years of an employee's work at LCCC, if they're performing well and they're meeting expectations on their evaluations, they have 5 opportunities to move along the salary scale from a longevity perspective. So why is that important? So we know right now, so let's assume that Lucas, average 10 years in a career, 30 years, is that pretty fair to say? So over a 30-year career in a position, you would assume you would move, higher into the salary schedule, right? So, for fresh out of college, getting ready to retire, and it's not perfect. There's lots of things that influence that, as we've talked about before. The fact that we're willing to start, we want to start people at the 25th percentile, makes us incredibly competitive right from the start. Combine that with a market-based salary system, really means we're positioning ourselves well to recruit people and retain folks when we get here. The fact that we're committing to, within 5 years, to have you sitting at the 50th percentile in your salary band, where arguably you would typically have to work 15 years to get to that point, is incredibly aggressive when you think about that. So that's those parts. From there, we've got increments that are built in where an employee can advance in the compensation if they meet their certain, say, preferred qualifications. So we have a faculty position, it requires a master's degree, and that's the basic requirement, but we prefer a doctorate, and specifically a doctorate in agriculture science. So whatever it is, there's the opportunity to move all the way up to the 75th percentile. And then to move beyond that, because your policy statement says where appropriate, we want to reward people for extraordinary efforts and outcomes. You have the opportunity to move even further based on that. So that's how the compensation structure will essentially be set up as you move through. You have the opportunity to move through longevity. So if I'm a good employee and I'm just here, I'm coming, and Archie's just going to show up and do a job every day and everything, but I don't really want to get any further education. You already did that. I don't really want to try to go out and beyond. Yeah, this is a poor example, isn't it? Archie. Because we should have Archie up here, right? Archie.
Yeah. And beyond.
Always fun. There's always fun. But even that, after 5 years, I could be sitting 50th percentile. That's pretty darn good. And I don't have to do anything else except for come in and do my job and do my job well. So we know we're going to be placed well and compensated well, but we give opportunity then for people to advance themselves when it helps their job and ultimately contribute at higher levels of compensation. So when you think about your policy statement that said, hey, we want to be aligned to market, we want to be competitive with placement, we want to recognize longevity, but we also want to recognize performance and extraordinary efforts. It's all in this wonderful model. So that's the model, that's the direction we're going, and where we're headed with that. Lucas, I might have you come up and give an update there because I want to get into the phase then after that. So Lucas, why don't you come up and I'll have you do that as he's coming up. So one of the things HR has been doing, working with our committee of faculty and staff, is developing a communication plan and implementing a communication plan to essentially take this new process out to the campus. And Lucas is going to give you an update on what they've been covering, who they've been meeting with, and how that's been going.
Yeah, and I'll make it quick because I know you've got a lot of information tonight to go over. But HR did work with various entities across campus to form a communication committee. Obviously, because if you leave all of the communication to me, it would probably come out like a statistics playbook, and it'd probably be really boring for most of campus. But we had plenty of good feedback from faculty members. We had classified staff representation, we had professional staff representation. We had plenty of feedback from cabinet. So really, we tried to create a well-rounded communication plan that was going to reach all aspects of campus and make this clearly understood and effective to everyone. So they're not getting into the weeds and the details of all the calculations, but do they understand the program? So created a presentation and many things to help out with that. To kick that off, President Schaefer and Madam Chair Merrill conducted a YouTube video that went out to all of campus. We had plenty of practice and feedback with getting that out there to make sure it was an effective script. That went to all of campus to communicate the plans to kick off. We then followed up with a letter to all employees that went out October 25th to kind of also explain a little bit more detail. And then we kicked off a lot of our communication or information sessions. So far, we've conducted 13 different sessions at varying times. It's really at 7 a.m. as late as 6:30 p.m. to try to hit all aspects of campus. We still have a few of those to go, including ACC's campus. Brady won't let me miss out on that one. Totally, we've hit about 152 of the employees so far. Additionally, we videotaped one of those sessions, put that up on our Eagle's Eye account online so that anybody who was not able to attend a session can also video it there. Presentation was also posted there. And then also we created a link on that line to submit frequently asked questions. And those are live updated as soon as the question goes up there. We get a notification in our email, so we get a response. And that's there for campus to kind of see a lot of the questions out there, obviously with this big of a change. Because a lot of them people just want to clearly understand what this new system is going to look like. So now I went fast through that, but there's a lot of communication going through campus to kind of really blanket the campus with this type of change so people can ask a lot of questions. Upcoming communications will also include individualized letters to all the employees that will hopefully go out in December, and then communication plan to target individual supervisors on campus to help give them information about their areas and how they're changing, and their ability to also communicate with their employees regarding that. So,
Any questions?
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
So the live questions, the question and answers, can we see those?
yep, we can end up getting you guys a copy of those so that you can. It's a simple, just online FAQ that kind of puts those communications on there, but we can definitely get copies of that out to you guys and submit it to Vicki to be able to provide all the board.
Madam Chair, members of the board, you should have access to Eagle's Eye, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure you do, so you can go to the HR community in Eagle's Eye and see all of those things, as well as the video presentation and the slide deck from the presentation itself. So Trustee Soto, if you need help, we'll get you access and how to get, Vicki can get you logged into Eagle's Eye and show you where all that's at. And then you can keep logging in and see how that FAQ has changed.
Yep.
Lucas, one of the questions I know one of the trustees had is tell us what kind of feedback are you getting? The good, the bad, the ugly. How are the different groups responding as you roll this out?
I mean, overall, when you roll it out and you look at it, and I've been given this feedback too from my experience in private sector, really aggressive plans like this are rare in government and educational entities. They're, for anybody that's got that experience, they are pretty rare. So we are really posing a very aggressive plan, and the majority of campus that is realizing that, is really getting some excitement and getting a lot of positive feedback. Now, with that, there is always caution. At any institution this size, you have that caution, in between administration and kind of understanding the full system. And our previous system has been in place. I think our last really thorough update of the compensation policy was 1989, like the complete overhaul and update. So our last system has been in place for a very long time. Besides minor updates and verbiage things, this is a pretty big overhaul for a long period of time. So for the majority of campus, it's a lot to digest. It's a lot to take in a short time period, and we are moving fast. But overall feedback is good. We do have people that are asking questions and are cautious about what's the future of the educational advancement plan. How's that going to look? What that's going to look like? And really, we're telling them that nothing's going away. We might see more of an adjustment or more guidance on what that equates to, and try to put more emphasis on that, helping progress the employee in their job or help progress the institution in meeting some of those preferred qualifications, kind of give some more guidance to that system. And we have some people in the crowd, if anybody remembers any of the questions or any concerns are coming up. Most of it, a lot, is that pause of just getting a moment to digest it, a moment to think about it. then I've seen some of those questions come up. Tammy's been really good. We've had questions about people wondering, are we going to take pay cuts? If my classification comes in, you know, and for some reason we compared it to market and it's lower than where I was supposed to be, and anybody's attended the presentations, I don't think I can mimic Tammy's boot stomp, but she's trying to really make it clear that no one is going to take pay cuts out of this situation. You're either be grandfathered in or the system will catch up with you as those market adjustments and those time passes. So good feedback, really pretty positive feedback, but again, you have that caution from everybody trying to understand it and rightful questions, good questions coming in on that FAQ. People just trying to understand that whole system and see where they fall in. So,
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, Lucas, what is the communications committee? And is it relevant to the students or is it something purely staff and administration?
right now it was purely staff administration since it does, you know, portray to the staff compensation model and how that is being rolled out to it. So it was purely the different demographics of staff across campus.
Okay.
Lucas,
Lucas, this is
gonna stay
amazing.
here. We're gonna
Thank you.
keep going through. So I want to talk a little bit. You can sit down.
Yeah. Looking at me.
So I want to talk a little bit about the implementation plan. And as Lucas said, this is a pretty comprehensive model change, you know, to the overall system. And so there's a lot of work that has to happen to get ready to implement this. Now, if you talk to the HR department, you talk to Lucas, and you talk to the folks that are working in colleague and all the technology, it's not the compensation stuff that I know a lot of other people are interested in. It's everything that's got to happen now. And just to give you an idea, every single one of our employees has to be modified and adjusted in colleague, in our technology system. And that means that we have to trigger ripple changes through position descriptions, through the time clock system, through the position control in colleague, to the PAF system. I mean, it's just the entire system behind this has to have modifications, and HR and Lucas, they're scrambling to get all that done. Most of us don't see it or feel it. We just expect it to be there. But the undertaking to modify all of that, to change the classification of a position is just incredible. So they're targeting to have that done. I don't know if this means they're going to actually work up till New Year's Eve on June 1st. But by the end of this year, they're going to have all of that stuff done. And so I just wanted to take a point to say, even though we don't see it and I don't even fully understand it, there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes, right, Lucas, to get this all in place and everything. So that's the first push. You got to have all that stuff there, or we're not going to be able to implement anything else. Then we get where I think everybody else is at, which is, okay, well, how's this going to impact my paycheck, right? And when's that going to happen? And ultimately, for you, and for what I'm looking for from the board, is guidance on whether or not we're on the right path for how we phase this in. Because our model is aggressive, because it's a major update after decades of not updating, we've got some catching up to do in some places. We're setting the bar higher, we need to do that. So we actually have to start to move people up. And so we've broken the implementation essentially down into 3 phases. We've got the pre-phase, which is essentially working on all the background stuff in by December. And then we go into phase 1. So if I go back, there we go. So as you recall, when I presented this last time, when we set these for positions and we've gone through, we have some employees with this new model who fall currently, their compensation falls below the new scale minimum, right? So again, we're aggressive. We're taking this market approach. We knew when we did that meant that we were going to have people that fall below the minimum. This is our target for where we want everybody to be at 25th percentile. We've got people back here. So phase 1 is moving these people to the minimum. We want to get them because they're the ones that arguably should have the first increase and need to be moved most immediately, right? And it's about 73 employees, so I have that right. And we're looking at our full-time or regular benefited employees is what we're looking at for this. So that's phase 1, is moving them to this minimum floor. Phase 2 then is taking all the employees that are below the 25th percentile and getting them to 25th percentile. And when you add that 73, and then we're up to about 223, about that close, 220?
Around 200 even or so.
Around 200 employees of our 380, roughly, that we need to move to the 25th percentile. That's phase 2. Phase 3 then is saying, okay, so what we need to do now is everybody, not just the 25th percentile, we want to make sure everybody is on their appropriate track towards the 50th percentile. So we know we'll have employees that we move to the 25th percentile, but they've been working here for 3 years, let's say, right? So we know we got to move them, assuming that they've had good performance reviews and all that other wonderful stuff, and they're doing well. We got to move them to their appropriate place on longevity. If they've been here for more than 5 years, it means we got to get those employees to mid. Anybody that's up here, they're not going to adjust through any of that. But phase 3 is getting our employees that appropriately placed on here. And that, did you calculate the number of employees that fall into that phase?
That one is still a moving target, but you can imagine it's still going to be
high 200s probably.
High 200s again. Yep.
Yeah. So that's phase 3. And then beyond that, we would basically look at implementing the model. So that's where we have the ability to start moving people based on preferred qualification, attainment, performance, things like that. We'll be building in annual costs. So right now, we mostly build in costs for educational advancements, but we'll have to be building in annual costs for longevity increments, as well as some of these other increments. So that's the maintenance piece once we get the first heavy lift out. So phase 1, moving people who are below minimum to minimum. Phase 2, moving those people to the 25th percentile. Phase 3, getting them on the appropriate longevity step towards 50th percentile or at 50th percentile. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me show you what these look like then when we go through. So phase 1, which essentially would be implemented in FY18, and I'll talk about why the numbers are a little bit different here. This is a cost perspective to get phase 1 in $422,000 is what it'll cost us. And that's across all funds, right? Current fund, the general fund is about $400,000, just slightly less, I think. So it's gonna cost us $422,000 just to get those people who are below minimum to minimum. Phase 2 then, it's gonna be about $1.3 million, actually $1.35 million to get everybody at the 25th percentile.
Mm-hmm.
So a bigger lift. And then we estimate it gets a little bit, this is still a moving target, but to get everybody to phase 3, get them on longevity, will be another $1.7 million. So in totality, it's about $3.5 million is what it's going to cost for us to get everybody where they need to be. Oh, right? $3.5 million, right? Probably not going to do that next month. Is that fair?
Fair.
So what we're trying to do is figure out how, and I hope you guys should be able to get this on your screen. Hopefully you can see it. It's not really good there. We're trying to figure out, so what's the best way for us to actually implement this? And so I have two plans here before you, an aggressive plan and a moderate plan. I'm going to spend most of my time on the aggressive plan because ultimately I think that's where my recommendation is going to be. This breaks down the phase by our fiscal year. So when we think about setting a budget, we're currently in fiscal year 18, and we're 1920. When we set a budget, what would this cost for us to phase this in? So we've got phase 1 up here. The total cost is $422,354.19. Luke's has got that nailed down, although that changes about hourly, right? Because personnel changes are happening all the time still on campus. On the current fund, which is really sort of the big one for us, that's our general fund for the most part. We have for FY18, if we implement this January 1, so from an employee's perspective, they would see that increase basically with January's payroll if we implement it then. We would have 6 months in this fiscal year to carry that expense. Now remember, when we set the budget, we had some of this, about $180,000, I want to say, set aside for the compensation plan. So there is some money in this year's budget for this, and it's pretty close to the 193. And Vice President Johnson says we can get there for this year. So we've got 6 months, but in FY19, so the next fiscal year, we'll have to pick up the other 6 months of that so that we budgeted for the full amount. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So we know we'll have to kick in another $193,000. And then each one, we have the auxiliary fund has a small impact of about, $1,200. The federal grants has a pretty big impact, $15,000, but they have to work within their grants to make sure that they can accommodate that. And then we've got the agency fund, which is a really small amount, and that's predominantly, I think, those personnel that are on like the student government or SBAC fees, things like that. Perhaps you're under auxiliary, aren't you, Bryn, for some of that? So pretty small. So that's to get phase one implemented. And I'm telling you right now, we can do that. I don't have any concern at all with doing that, and I think we can do that within the current fund through reallocation and all that good stuff. And so one thing for sure, I'm hoping we can leave tonight saying phase one's no brainer. We need to kind of move into that because I think we can do that. Let me pause there and give my caveats. I'm thinking of Trustee Erickson mentioning this too. As we've been out talking to the campus about this and we roll this out, we're given the caveat that, right, if the legislature comes in and cuts our budget again, this is all going to have to change. So this is really dependent on the fact that everything sort of stays as is and as planned. But if we have to take additional budget cuts, it's back to the drawing board and we've got to kind of reimagine it. So make sure you keep that in mind, that that's one of the caveats. So phase two then, so again, this is moving all those people then to the 25th percentile. It's going to cost us $1.35 million roughly to do that. On the general fund, it's just under $1.2 million. So a much bigger lift. We can't do that in 1 year, I don't think. Not without a really significant, impact with it. And I'm even worried how we're going to do that. But on the aggressive plan, we would essentially have to have almost $600,000 in FY19, so next fiscal year, and then have another $600,000 on the current fund as we go into FY20. So it takes 2 years to implement that, gives us 2 years. And essentially what we would do is move those employees 50% of the way to the 25th percentile, and then the other 50% the next year. Now, somebody who's right underneath that 25th percentile, you're just gonna get little bumps. Somebody that just got moved to the minimum, you're getting big bumps. And so what we're trying to do is get to those employees that really need the biggest adjustment the soonest. Is that right, Nate? Okay. Most expeditiously. Okay, so we get there. But what you can see is, so in FY18 we have about total impact of about 211,000. When we get to 19 with this, we got an impact of $883,000. The current fund alone is 2 and 6. It's almost $800,000 when we get there. Then we go to 20, another $600,000. So then we get to phase 3 on the aggressive plan. So when we get to phase 3, we're talking about the first portion of that in FY21, the second portion FY22, the third portion FY23. So this is aggressive plan. We're talking 2023. So if you imagine the moderate plan goes out even further, right? So this is going to take some time. And I share that with you because we will have those employees that are sitting at, say, 60th percentile right now. Unless the state does a pay plan in which we can do a cost of living adjustment, those folks aren't going to move. We're putting the money where the people need it the most right now, and we just have to be ready for that. That they're not going to move. Now the state comes in and does a pay plan, and we can do a COLA, cost of living adjustment. So we'll move the whole scale, and then they'll see that. But in terms of where we can direct our resources, it's trying to get people online to do this. So when you get out here in FY21, it means we have another 566,000, 22 and 23. So that means every year we've got to find that within our budget to move through that. And so we can do that, through reallocation is one way to do that. And maybe there's new revenue, the state's picture, improves, and we see some higher appropriations. We know the tuition flat spot is going away next fall, which means students will pay for every credit, not just up to 12. Sorry, Derek. I'll give you the letter to the Wyoming Community College Commission if you want to send it to them. But that will generate some additional revenue with it. So there are some revenue things that could potentially happen with that. You also have the moderate plan. Let's see if I can get to that. In here as well, the moderate plan, essentially the difference here is for phase 2, we're just taking a third year to do it instead of 2 years. and then we bump this out, which means we're actually out to 2024 before it's fully implemented. So it's going to take some time to get there. So this is where I need to get your feedback from, but I'll put this out here. The only way that we can probably do either of these and get them going is by tapping into the 1 mil fund for operating expenses. So for those of you that have some history on the board, you may recall at one time the board directed me to remove the ongoing operating expenses, specifically personnel costs, off of the 1 mil onto the current fund. So Trustee Little, you probably remember that. And the idea was sound. It was to free the 1 mil up so we had those revenues to invest in critical one-time only things such as facilities planning, small maintenance projects, one-time only purchases, acquisitions, and things like that. And that saved our bacon when we did the core initiative and had to go through all those budget cuts and everything. So we've tried to keep that 1 mil liquid. Right now, we estimate that 1 mil revenues for next year are going to be somewhere between 1.5 and 1.7 million dollars. So there are funds available for us to do that. And where I'm leaning is that we would look at using a portion of that, perhaps even a significant portion of that, to allow us to start phase 2 specifically and get that implemented, with the expectation that as the budget picture of the institution improves, we go back to moving those expenditures off of the 1 mil back onto the current fund. But at this point, it seems like addressing these issues for our employees are probably more important than carving out some funds so we can buy microscopes or things like that and some of the other things that we were doing. Still important things that we need to do, but this would allow us to leverage it. That really is the only way that I can see with the existing revenue picture as it is, that we would be able to implement these. And if we decided to do that then, so as I said, I think we can get phase 1. So I think we can find another $193,000 in the current fund for next year. Out of a $46 million budget, I think we can find that. So phase 1, I think is pretty solid. But for us to get $600,000, I think we can get that with the 1 mil. As I said, let's say 1 mil brings in $1.5 million next year. 600,000 of that is doable. Now we could also say, let's just do the whole thing out of the 1 mil and take 1.2 million out of it. It still leaves $300,000. The only reason I suggest we don't do that is each year that we take to implement that gives us 1 more year to find other revenue sources on the current fund or somewhere else to actually be able to manage it. So we're not taking such a big chunk out of the 1 mil and then find ourselves strapped when we need something significant. But worst case scenario, we implement that, we have to use 600,000 of the 1 mil, and nothing changes going into the next year. Then we go in and we use another 600,000, and we're still fine from there. But we have to start moving this back because that starts to max out the 1 mil. And when we get into phase 3, we've got to find approximately $500,000 per year in the current fund to be able to implement that, which means that has to come from reallocation or increase in revenue. And we think we can get some of that. We know we'll see some improvement in the state's budget picture. If we do move forward and we can add students through an additional residence hall. I mean, there's some things there that will help us get to it, but it also gives us, essentially till 2021 to work on that.
Madam Chair, I have a question. So Joe, if I'm understanding this correctly, you're sort of borrowing from the 1 mil in a sense with the active trust that you're going to be able to somehow replace that money in the 1 mil or be able to keep carrying these increased salaries without having to keep digging into the 1 mil. Is that right?
Yeah. Madam Chair, Trustee Little, so I'm continuing to function under the expectation that you want to see that 1 mil ultimately more liquid.
Right.
As you've said in the past. And so in essence, yes, we are using that liquidity to help us phase in this compensation model so we can get those employees that we really want to move up sooner than instead of waiting for other funds. But always on our planning and in our mind is we need to be working to relieve the 1 mil of that pressure down the road. And so we'll continue to do it just like we did, 4 or 5 years ago where we really started to move those expenditures off.
Yeah.
In any given fiscal year, we there's a lot of money. There's always a few $1 million that are reallocated. So there's always some things we can flex with. This just sort of locks us into the priority around compensation and you know, and wages. And we need to be working in those areas. But
Yeah, well, that it makes sense. When you said, I would rather be using our 1 mil for this purpose than microscopes or something like that. I think you said something like that. Do you have
I'll take that back to the science fact.
That I would like to know though, I mean, the plan makes sense, but I would like to know then what is that 1 mil not getting spent on? What's not getting funded? Because we're doing this.
Madam Chair, Trustee Little, so you'll start to see that as we develop the budget. You go through your first readings, you know how we share the fund uses and sources and uses documents.
Yeah, and the tab that says 1 mil.
But essentially what we would do, we know or we hope, you know, we're not going to have any significant facilities planning on the 1 mil because we're at level 2 with all the projects that need to be that way. So we know the facilities planning funds aren't going to be needed going forward. So that's going to come up. We'll probably have to reduce the amount that we set aside for small maintenance projects. We can do that. There are some one-time expenses like specific scholarship items. We got to get back to the current fund. But other than that, we'll probably have to reduce some one-time only funds and we won't have a lot of money for one-time only expenditures as we've had in the past. And just try to whittle back some of those other things that we've put on there. I can't even remember all the specifics with them. And so we'll just have less money to acquire and use for one-time investments, at least until we can free those funds back up.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
Joe, my question is, with the change in tuition where students are going to be paying for every credit hour, do we have any way of knowing, do we anticipate how that's going to affect our revenue?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Trustee Soto, I know that our budget director, Jane Myrick, has modeled that. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. And some of that is so contingent on the type of student and student enrollment that she would probably even be a little bit reticent to actually throwing numbers out. It will have a net positive impact on us. We just, at this point, I can't tell you exactly how much that will be.
Okay.
But we will get there. It's premature yet.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead. So these are just one-time expenditures through each one of these. They're not ongoing costs. So it's just diverted for this 600,000 in 19.
No, Madam Chair, Trustee Ketchum, they would be base building ongoing costs, and that's what I'm saying. Once we start using the 1 mil, we're committing those funds until we can get them over to the current fund by freeing something up on the current fund. And remember, the current fund is 46 million dollars. So there's room there, but we have to work strategically over time to free up the capacity to move those back. So once we say add this 600,000 to the limit, it's on there.
Okay, so it's an ongoing cost. It's built into the budget of that.
Yeah, ongoing. Yep. So these all would be ongoing because it's an employee's compensation. And that's why making this commitment really does deviate away from keeping the 1 mil liquid. We're now committing those funds ongoing until we can actually really take them off of that fund.
Trustee Erickson?
Madam Chair, in regard to committing the 1 mil monies, more of the 1 mil monies for personnel expenses, I'd like to let the new trustees know that 2 years ago, we set up a goal for Dr. Joe to address compensation and classification. And we had a number of different discussions about how we might go forward and do that and looking at what we wanted to accomplish. And I think Dr. Joe's reviewed a number of those things. And I believe that the 1 mil is the one place where we can get some funds to achieve the implementing of this particular sophisticated, very sophisticated compensation and classification plan, compensation plan. I do have a question though, on your fiscal 19 phase 1. Now that's 12 months, is it not? And I see 193 for fiscal 19 and for 6 months, 193. Am I missing something here?
No, Madam Chair, Trustee, this is where Jess is going to have to help me, Trustee Ketchum. biennial math is crazy, and I can never get it right, and so you have to work at it for a long time. So here's the way to think about this, because it's spanning, well, actually, let me do biennial. We already built into the budget, so it's in this year's budget. We've committed half of that, right? So it's in here. So going forward, that's already built into the budget, the 193. So that will pay for 6 months for the rest of this year.
Okay.
So as we go into FY19, we already have this built into the budget. So we've got 6 months covered. We need to find the funds for the other 6 months, and that's where the other 193 comes from. So that the total budget, so it's only.
I'm sorry, that is statistical Mickey Mouse. I don't understand it.
So let's put it this way. So let's say that for a year, I want to pay you $10 for a year.
Yeah.
So I've got $5 right now, and I'm going to pay you the $5 just for January through the end of June, right? So let's say the next year, assuming that we replenish the budget, that $5 is still there. I've got it, but now I've got to pick up the other 6 months, which means I have to come up with the other $5 to get you at the 10. Well, our budget essentially is replenished every year. So that first $5 was replenished. I've got to come up with the other $5 so that I got you covered for the entire year. And that's essentially what we're doing here. We've got that first 193,000 covered, but to cover the rest of it, then we'll have to budget in another 193,000.
If you say so. It really is hard for
You're
this.
starting on January.
Yeah.
Correct.
You're starting January, which is halfway through this fiscal year.
Correct.
So that's why it's half the amount. And you got the next year covered. Okay.
And this is already accounted for in this year's budget, which means that budget is already there. When we reset the budget, replan, that budget is still there, but we've got to now find the other amount for the entirety of the year.
It's the biennialization is what it's called. I don't even think it's a word, but
That's, with biennial math, that's what's so frustrating. You see these numbers like it's a biennialized cut of 5 million. Well, the reality is once you take the 2.5, you've already taken it. As long as you carry that cut into the next year, you've already biennialized. It's just the total biennium that's a $5 million price tag, but you only have to make that cut once.
Yeah, you see, when I look at it, I would have thought that would have been doubled for fiscal 19, because the fiscal 18 is for 6 months and fiscal 19 is for 12 months. But you've explained it, and everybody else understands it, and I'm in the doghouse. I'm sorry.
What new money do we have to bring to pay for it?
Okay.
it's 24 months. That's how you have to base it on everything.
24 months?
Yes,
Okay,
2 years.
okay.
Okay, so, Madam Chair, I have one
Yes.
question, I hope. And maybe, I like to think in percentages. So if I understand what you just said, you said the 211,177 is budgeted for, so that's really not part of the total cost. Or it's part of the cost, but it's already accounted for part of the total cost.
We already have the resources to
Okay.
cover that, correct?
So then the next year, fiscal year 19, is our baseline number that we can compare that 883 to and say what percent is that 883 of the baseline that you would already currently plan to expend? If that makes sense. Because this is all incremental, right? This is not.
Correct.
This is not a new number in total.
Madam Chair, Trustee Salazar, that is correct. It is incremental. I would have to know what the total salary cost is for the entire budget. It's a whole lot more than that.
Right.
So I don't know. That would be a fairly small percent.
Very small
So
percent.
46 million salaries and benefits, and this is salaries and benefits, correct?
Well, I think that's the answer. If it's 46 million, then that's that's compared to 46 million.
About half of our, no, actually about 60% of our total budget is salary and benefits. So 60% of 46 million, and then take that as a proportion of that, it's a pretty small amount. And remember, from a current fund, that includes the 1 mil, that's because of the Eastern Laramie County piece. That includes 40,000 on the auxiliary, so that would be things like the Children's Discovery Center, the Residence Hall. Those are outside of the current fund. Those budgets have to find it. 28,000 on grants and 7,000 in agencies. So this is the one, for the most part, that I worry about is the current general operating fund. So it's this 592 plus the 193, but this is total cost. And that's been confusing to some folks, but we have to break it out by fund because we need to be working with the grants people to see, can you accommodate this as well to do that? So it is incremental, but it is a small portion of the total salaries and benefits costs of the operating budget.
Thanks.
Trustee Ketchum would like to speak again.
It's just, and this is a perfect world, so everybody meets expectations. Everybody gets, so, I mean, this probably would not be this full amount because this is 100%. Every employee gets this portion, correct? Or
Madam Chair, Trustee Ketchum and Lucas will correct me if I'm wrong. For the most part, this is all for all employees. There may be a case where we've got an employee on a performance improvement plan or have performance issues where we say, when we get to phase 3 though, so the longevity increments, you only advance, not just because I'm here year after year, you have to actually be performing the duties of your job to advance. So it's very possible that an employee will struggle for a year, be on a performance improvement plan or have a disciplinary action, and they may not get that increment. With that, for phase 1 and phase 2, I think it's pretty much all employees with that. After, beyond that though, then performance becomes an increasingly and when we get to that full implementation, performance becomes very important. And in fact, one of the things, just to make it clear to you that I've shared with the campus, and I think Tammy and Lucas have as well, if we as an institution are going to commit to a very aggressive, highly compensated employment model here, just like with our students, we're going to have high expectations for their performance. We'll give lots of support, but we're going to invest in people who perform and really do really well. And so that's where the money is going to go. And the expectation is going to be there that our employees excel and they do wonderful and they do work. And so if we're going to make the commitment to pay well, we're going to expect, high outcomes and high performance. And I think that's fair. And as I said, I think we set high standards for our students in our classroom and say, we expect you to perform well and we're going to give you everything we got to help you get there. So yeah, Lucas.
Real quick, one thing I wanted to point out, Joe, you touched on this a little too. But you're in the process of getting, by the time this is all done, approaching 70 to 75%, 100% of your staff onto this system. But following FY 22 and the plan's done, your maintenance, it slowly builds, but after that, your maintenance costs will fall significantly. And the fact is you're converting to a system, so the upfront cost of it is high to get people there, but significantly trying to model that far out, and it's really hard part to predict. But FY24, you're looking at a significant drop in what the maintenance cost is. Now all of your employees are on this model. All you would really have is progressing existing or new hires coming in, and that will be a very much smaller percentage.
Yeah, and Lucas, I'm glad you mentioned new hires because I had that question. So of course, we don't know who's leaving and who's coming in and all that kind of stuff. But then after phase 1 is complete, then whenever there's a new hire, they will be above minimum. Once phase 2 is complete, if there's a new hire, they will be at 25%. Am I getting that right?
Madam Chair, Trustee Little, actually right now, it's a case-by-case basis for the most part. We've said we don't want to compound the matter. And I know there's an equity and fairness issue here, but we don't want to be bringing people in below, adding to the amount that has to adjust them.
Right.
So what we're trying to do, if it's a single position, a unique position, there's no others, we're trying to get them to start at least at the 25th percentile.
Right.
If it's a hire into a position where there's, say, like 3 advisors, then we're looking at all of them to see if we can move them right now all to that 25th percentile so we don't have conversion issues. So it's really case by case. But we're trying to get even new hires at that 25th because if we start them at the minimum, then we're just compounding the amount that we've got.
Right, but you don't want to hire somebody new at a higher salary.
And that's
which at a higher salary than somebody already here. That's why you're saying, we got a new hire. We need to get a 25%. We need to lump everybody in at 25%.
Madam Chair, Trustee Little, and that's why I'm saying that everyone's a case by case analysis.
Yes,
and Lucas's part. I think that's one of the pressures why we want to get this done so fast.
And that makes sense then, because you want the aggressive plan then, don't you? Because that will help in the new hire situation. Because in the modified or whatever that other one is, you're gonna be stuck in that dilemma more often.
We're kicking that.
Right, okay.
And the bottom
Thank you.
line for this is that we want to be an employer of choice. We will, right? That is our goal, employer of choice. People
Madam
will
Chair,
wanna
members of
work
the board, what I think we like about this is that if you go back to, and you'll see it here, it's gonna work its way through the process. You go back to that draft policy statement, and those specifically policy things. I want to be an employer of choice.
Mhm.
We want to be competitive. We want our salary system structured by the market. We want to include longevity where important. We want to include performance. Every one of those policy statements is represented in this model.
Exactly.
That's what makes it so unique. So I guess, I know we want to move on. My recommendation to you at this point is that you give me some direction to move with the aggressive plan, and again, barring any major legislative cuts, hiccups, things along the way, this is the direction that I will take as we start to build the FY19 budget out. This is the direction that I will take as we try to get some of these employees on this plan by January payroll to do that, and so.
Well, Madam Chair, if I understand your two plans, the moderate plan and the aggressive plan, the fiscal 18, we stay the way we are. Fiscal 19 would be a major increase in the current fund from 395 to 592,000. If I'm seeing that right. The only difference between the moderate plan and the aggressive plan is starting it much quicker, and also the aggressive would go for the second phase over 2 fiscal years, while the moderate goes over 3 fiscal years. If I'm following that.
Madam Chair, Trustee Harrison, that really is the only difference, is there's 3 years for phase 2 versus 2.
Okay. That then leads me to probably speaking against the aggressive plan. I'm, as you well know, I'm rather conservative, and not knowing what's going on at the state level and what's going to happen in this legislature, at this point, I would rather see us go with the moderate plan that extends phase 2 over 3 years rather than 2 years. And that's my reaction to this as I look at it. It's a little scary, all that money. There's a lot of money here. And we're looking at our mill levy as the place for personnel expenses. I just like to have a little wiggle room to work that in. And so I would speak for going with the moderate plan.
Madam Chair.
Jess, please.
Oh, I understand what you're saying, Don. And I'm just trying to think of a way to come meet in the middle if we do the aggressive plan based upon what the legislature is going to, what we see the legislature doing, because it's not like fiscal year 19 starts in July, the legislature meets here soon, we can kind of see where they're going. And if it looks like it's going downhill, then we can go to the moderate plan, or if it looks like it's
I'd rather start on the moderate and then go to the aggressive.
The other way.
Can we do that, Dr. Schaefer?
Madam Chair, we can do either of those. The reason I recommend the aggressive, we've had very similar conversations. In fact, we had, what did we call the slow plan? I don't remember what the third one was that we would add columns. It pushed it out. Here's what the approach you would likely get from me as a recommendation in the budget is dipping into the 1 mil. And so right now, in my mind, the only benefit, and all these are, dependent in some ways on what the legislature does. We'll have to react if they, go in, if things get cut, we'll have to react regardless. The only difference between the two is the amount of money resources that we essentially keep liquid in the 1 mil. So with the moderate plan, we're tapping into a smaller portion of the 1 mil. So we're leaving more liquid, and it's giving us that 1 extra year to try to find wiggle room to move money back to the current fund and things like that. So you get 1 extra year to try to, move some money back, and you're not using as much as the 1 mil. And so there's merit in that. It leaves more of the 1 mil flexible for one-time expenditures, but it does then delay the full implementation of this by a full fiscal year. And so So we've been weighing that, is it better to have the liquidity in the 1 mil and have that extra year in which we can actually work to either increase the current fund revenues or find ways to move 1 mil expenditures back? Or is it better just to move through and get this implemented as soon as possible so that we can kind of get back set to normal? There's merit to both of them. In the end, I think what HR and folks said is let's try to get it done as soon as possible. It's just going to be easier to get implemented. And as a result, we're willing to lose that 1 year and to lose some liquidity in the 1 mil.
Well then, Madam Chair, that's helpful information.
Would you make
Because
a
you-
motion?
Can I make my
Yes,
comment, please?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Because I like to retract the earlier comment, because what I'm hearing is that this has been well vetted, that you batted it back and forth. It's been on both sides of the court. And the staff is coming to us recommending the aggressive plan, rather than the fact that we have 2 plans and a board select one. You're really coming in with a pretty well thought out plan. So I'll retract my earlier comments.
Am I right in that, Lucas? That's still where we're standing?
I would agree that the more aggressive plan, not only for the reward of your employees being able to see a change faster and a more aggressive approach to it, because that part of it, we also have to do what's fiscally responsible. The other side of it, the more aggressive plan also makes the implementation easier, the calculations, the math, the hiring process, the future of our recruitment process is easier too. It shortens that time frame that we can get those processes vetted and implemented and in place also, so the whole system is up and running faster.
So think about 223 employees, 200 employees impacted. All of them will be on different spots. And every year that we push that out, then we've got to create customized calculations to move them in thirds based on those 200 employees, which means every year Lucas then has to manage 200 adjustments and has to have every employee on that thing. And so each year we take out of that makes management on there and probably easier as well. So Madam Chair, a motion would certainly help, a straw poll general guidance, but I'd like to walk out of here knowing, one, that we can get the phase 1 implementation going so that HR can prepare for that, and those folks would likely see adjustments in their July pay or January payroll. And then 2, that we can start developing the budget based on these expectations.
Well then, Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion. And given what we have heard, and I think that since this is a budget issue, and we do approve the budget each fiscal year, I think it is appropriate for us to have this motion. I move that the board approves the aggressive plan for the compensation adjustment that has been presented to us.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Jess seconded.
Next.
Any more discussion?
Can I amend to it, just based upon if the legislature or something, can we put that in there, that if the legislature decides to cut our budget, we have the option to cease this plan and find another route?
Yeah, I think that's a friendly amendment.
Okay.
Okay. Does everyone accept the motion with the amendment? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous, Vicki. Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Schaefer, for being, and Lucas, because this was part of Dr. Schaefer's goal for this year. So thank you so much for getting.
Madam Chair, Joe,
Yes.
how much is the 1 mil? I know you told us, what's that generate on an annual basis?
Madam Chair, Trustee Cato, right now we're estimating it's about 1.5. It could be 1.7. So the 2 things that generally drive the 1 mil revenues, local valuation, of course, but then also the motor vehicle. We get a portion of that for NOLA motor vehicle licensures. Do you know how much off the top of your head what it was for this year? It's about 1.5, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But our valuation has been increasing, and we think that will probably increase. In fact, to give you an idea, when I started, just about 6 years ago, it generated about $1 million. So in Laramie County, it's been moving in the right direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, one last thing for you, Madam Chair. I just want to say that kudos goes to a lot of departments on campus, payroll, information technology, cabinet. There's been numerous working groups on campus to make this feasible, to bring this to you guys.
And thank you very much for that comment, because I believe that we are a team on this campus. We work together for a common goal, and I'm glad you brought that up. So thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Schaefer. policies, first reading, Dr. Schaefer, I guess Tammy's not here this evening, so.
Yep, Madam Chair, members of the board. So these are first reading policies before you. There's 3 of them. If you have questions, especially about the first one, the campus alcohol policy, I'll probably defer those to Lisa Trimble over there. The other 2, my name's by them, and I would do my best to answer questions. One thing I did notice, Madam Chair, in at least the travel policy, and I think even IT policy, and Vicki, this was my fault. There's some grammatical things I may change between now and your next reading, but they're essentially here for your first reading, just for your information. If you have questions now, we'd be happy to answer them, but study them, and then when we come back next month, they'll be before you on second reading for your approval.
Jeff.
I just had a quick question on the alcohol policy. The 2 stricken ones on 1, I guess A and B, I just didn't know what the purpose.
Sure, Trustee Ketchum. We took those out because we really felt like they were more procedural than policy oriented.
Okay.
And so when we reviewed this particular policy, we felt like there were some pieces in it that didn't necessarily pertain to the policy as much as they pertained more to the procedure. So those are some of the adjustments that we see.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. There's a chair here. Thank you for that comment, Jess. Anyone else on any of these? Have you had time to read them?
You will now between now and next month.
It'll be back to us.
Between now and next month, perfect. Okay, thank you very much. Simple.
Madam Chair, I'll just move on to your policies for second reading, if okay, and cover both of these. So these were before you at your last month's meeting for first reading. They're back to you for your second reading and your approval. You'll see there's a staff recommendation to that effect. The first one is your board committee's policy. And as I stated last time, essentially the changes to this really calls out and creates the performance evaluation committee that essentially sets the structure in which you conduct your own board self-evaluation, the CEO evaluation, and formalizes that as a committee. And so that's the only change. It's moved through the process with really no feedback, and happy to answer any questions about it. Otherwise, I recommend you approve it.
Any questions? May I please have a motion of acceptance?
Madam Chair, I move to approve Board Committee Policy 1.2.6.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? It passes unanimously.
Great, then Madam Chair, the second one is the changes to the CEO evaluation and accountability policy. As a result of the conversation about forming your performance evaluation committee, you at the start of this wanted more detail into what you would expect to evaluate the president on. And so the changes here really talk about and delineate the specific aspects that are incorporated into the presidential evaluation: goal setting, institutional effectiveness report, a mid-year progress report, the annual self-evaluation, then your evaluation of me. So they just really spell out that process so that there's a little bit more specificity and perhaps some more teeth into the requirements for the CEO's evaluation. And again, my recommendation is for you to approve it.
Madam
Any
Chair.
discussion?
I move to approve the CEO evaluation and accountability policy.
A second, please.
Second.
Wendy, second it. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Brenda?
This is telling Joe I wrote the initial policy that was really simple.
But we're very proud of you for writing a lot.
No, I like this a lot better.
Okay.
I just.
Well, you did good. And did you say aye?
Aye, yeah.
The vote is unanimous. Thank you. Anybody opposed? Okay, nobody. Approval item, the Laramie County Community College District audit. Do we have any questions?
Madam Chair, members of the board, our good friend from McGee, Hearn and Pye, Swine Hair, is here, and so I'm sure he'd answer any questions that you may have after you've had the opportunity to dig into it. I'm half tempted to make Nola present this for some reason, just for old time's sake or something. I don't know.
Wayne wouldn't mind that, would you?
So do I have a motion for approval?
Oh, we gotta hear from Wayne. It wouldn't be the same.
Wayne, how about 2 minutes?
I gave the extensive presentation.
You have to stand up there.
Oh, gosh. I gave the extensive presentation last time.
You did.
The short one is everything's the same as what you saw before, except for a few wording changes here and there.
Okay.
We did add a paragraph because there's a new standard for next year.
Where is that paragraph?
That paragraph is the end of footnote 1. I don't know what page that is. But it basically means that next year, the state is adopting a new GASB Statement 75. And that's for what we call an OPEB, Other Post-Employee Benefit Plan. And you are a participant in the state's retiree health insurance plan. So next year, that'll have to be adopted. And we don't know what the amount is because the state didn't get an actuarial study done properly this year. Okay. They got one done, but it had problems. So they're going to adopt it next year. But you're in that plan. So you remember the GASB 68 retirement one where you picked up this big liability that's not yours? Part 2 is coming. We don't know how much it'll be, but the state's liability will be around $800 million, and you'll have some portion of that shows up on your financials. And it all relates to retiree health insurance, but we don't know how much that'll be.
Okay. Well, thank you.
What
Any
percentage?
What?
But your statements for this year look the same as what I gave you before.
Thank you.
So will that affect the TCREF portion?
My understanding is that retiree benefit is only available to people that are in WRS to get their health insurance paid. And there's for every year of service a person has when they retire, they get so many dollars and cents per month towards their health insurance premiums.
It's like $11.25 if Lucas is still here to do that.
He left.
Per year
Per year.
of service.
So you gotta work like 20 years.
As usual, an amazing job.
Madam Chair, it was a lot easier when Nola was there helping me.
She's doing a good job.
Yeah, I miss her.
I don't have a question. Are you ready for a motion?
Oh, yes, I am. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the Laramie County Community College fiscal 2017 audit.
A second, please.
I second.
Bob seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? The motion is unanimous. Thank you very much. Residence Hall?
Madam Chair, members of the board, if I could, before we go, Nola, Nola Roca, our comptroller. The audit is probably one of the most stressful and significant aspects of her role here. And I know you were on the other side of the ball field for this one, but I just wanted to recognize you because I know how much work goes into these audits, and it may be a quick and fast motion here, but getting to the point where we have a clean audit and an unqualified opinion, it's a lot of work. So I just wanted to thank you for what you've done and welcome you again to LCCC.
And I would like to thank you, and you know that we trust you to do this, but it's the audit is perfect. Perfect way to oversee all this. So thank you very much. Residence Hall, Dr. Schaefer and Judy Hay.
Yep, Madam Chair, members of the board, I think I'll take a stab at it. The difficult questions Vice President Hay can answer, certainly. So again, this is the level, 1 update, really level 2 study for the new residence hall on the LCCC campus. You saw it in draft form at your last meeting. It's here for your approval. As we discussed somewhat at dinner, given the outcome of the election yesterday, you can look at this plan in 2 ways. The first is it is still a viable and really feasible level 2 plan that creates a feasible project for a residence hall on campus and could be approved, knowing that this sets us on a track for a $28 million residence hall. Given the outcome of the election yesterday, if we do decide to move forward with the residence hall project and try to find a way to make it viable, the scope and scale of the project will have to change and have to change with some significant substance, which may mean this plan has to change as well. And so, right now I'm hesitating with whether or not to recommend that you approve this in its form, or whether or not to encourage you to give me some direction to go back to the architects and to Vice President Johnson and have them explore and see if there's any feasible way for us to modify this plan to make it pencil without the community support, without putting the cost to live in the residence hall and the escalators for those board rates out of the reach of our students. I mean, we can come up with a plan that we can do on paper, but will outprice the students, and I don't think that's what you want. But I can go either way. I think even with an improved level 2, if we move forward trying to find a feasible option with the residence hall, we can use this plan to guide that. But it might be more appropriate for you to actually ask for me to test that a little bit more formally and come back to you with a level 2 that actually shows a plan that could be done without the community support.
Madam Chair, I have a question. Joe, I hear what you're saying, and that it might be a good idea for us to ask you to go back and come up with a modified plan. How we have this document now. How will that decision slow down any progress?
Madam Chair, Trustee Little, I think the only real progress is just the approval of level 2. Other than that, if we were to try to find a way to move forward with the residence hall project, we have to determine whether that's even feasible. And so we can't really move anywhere until we get to that point anyway. So I guess what I'm saying is for us to actually have a chance of moving forward with this project in a reduced scale, we still have to go through and modify the plan. So it may make sense just to go ahead and do that and then bring it back to you when it's modified.
Madam Chair, I totally agree with the comments that Dr. Joe made, because the voters obviously voted against the $8 million to be added on to the residence hall. And we have the ability to go out with revenue bonds with something like maybe 20 million, but I cannot at this time approve this at the 28 million. So I would recommend that we postpone the decision on the level 2 until you come back to us and give us the enlightenment of how we're going to go forward with using revenue bonds to build the new residence hall. If I need that to be in a motion, I'll make that as a motion.
Please make it as a motion.
I just did.
Okay.
Did you catch it?
A second, please.
I'll second.
Brad seconded. Vicky. Yes, Don and Brad. Is there discussion?
So I just want to make sure I understand the motion properly. So Don's motion is saying, we're not going to approve this level 2 plan. We're asking Dr. Schaefer to come back with another plan with a different scale model under which we could pay for the project through revenue bonds. Am I
Yes.
understanding that correctly?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
It's a postponing of the approval of the
Okay.
level 2, given the itemization that you just had there, that we would do it within our capacity by issuing revenue bonds.
Okay, and Madam Chair, if I just want to make sure I understand what I'm voting for. So, Madam Chair, also, if I understood Dr. Schaefer correctly, even if we approved of this model 2 today, it wouldn't make any difference because we wouldn't be able to carry this plan out. So it doesn't really slow down any progress for us to approve this motion. Is that correct?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Trustee Little, that is correct.
Okay.
We, as Trustee Erickson said, we can't move forward with this plan at this level at this point. So for us to even move forward with anything, we'll have to adjust the plan. The only caveat that I would add is that there is the chance that we can't make this work. So even with reduced scope, we may not be able to make it work. And so I may come back to you without a plan at all and say, we can't make it work at that threshold. So I just want to make sure that's clear. Our hope would be that we can find a way to significantly reduce the scale and scope of the residence hall project to make it pencil without pricing students out of the market. And that's what I'll try to do based on your direction if you approve Don's motion. But just know that there's a chance that we can't make it work, and I'll bring it back to you and say it's not feasible.
Okay. Should we put a timeline on it?
Or him getting back, or for what?
Yeah,
For him to bring a plan back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
What do you think, Dr. Joe?
Madam Chair, I really don't know what the timeline would be, to be honest with you.
A couple of months. Do you think a couple of
Oh, yeah, I think so. We can.
Okay.
So I have one question. Is it
Yes.
the 20
Yeah.
million that we're looking at, the scale back to? Is that what?
Madam Chair, Trustee Salazar, that's the number that I think we have in our mind. I don't know. There was a price point based on Vice President Johnson's modeling that we had to get to charge reasonable rates with reasonable annual escalators in those rates to be able to make it pencil. The 20 million is what I have in my mind, but I'd much rather have him actually figure out. I'd rather not sit that. If it's 18 million and they can get to it, that's great. And see if we can let the model actually dictate what that number is.
So do you want to put a time, like by the January meeting or something like that?
If you do, Madam Chair, we can go forward with that, but I'm not feeling an urgency for a timeline.
No, Madam Chair, members of the board, you know me.
You'll get it done tomorrow.
So-
I'm not feeling that urgency.
Okay, so could we, oh, yes.
Madam Chair, I just, President Schaefer, if you could keep in mind the revenue piece to this project and drive that revenue piece as hard as you can, like 350 beds. As much as you can. If you have to really take it all out, I mean, take a lot of the guts out, and then we could maybe scale it, or at least we could, over the 5-10 years, build into that space. But having 350 beds and being able to project revenue from it.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Trustee Kale, it's a good reminder. And that's really the core of Vice President Johnson's model. It's driven by occupancy rates, by bed numbers, by rate escalators and things like that, and the actual costs. And so we've been able to kind of look at those thresholds, and that's what will drive it. My guess is, as I said at dinner, what we'll likely do is remove the non-revenue generating space first and try to maximize the amount of beds, because that's going to help us with the debt service. If we remove beds, every one of those, we lose a revenue stream. Yeah.
Any other questions? Could I please have you repeat the motion?
The motion is that we postpone the level 2 planning for the residence hall until Dr. Schaefer can come back to us with a plan that doesn't require the 8 million that we were looking to the voters to provide us.
And did I have a second? Brad was a second. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone disagree? The motion passes.
Madam Chair, I have an additional comment. Would it be appropriate, Dr. Schaefer, for a member of the board to continue with the task force that is looking this residence hall plan over, like our chairman, so that she can be sitting there and participating as well?
Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, if that committee is convened, I would say without a doubt, I'm not sure that they wouldn't just dig into it from an architectural perspective and say, here's the new parameters.
Okay.
Tell us if this can work or not, and
I'll bring it back to us.
And then bring it back, and it may come right back to you. Maybe we'll start at facility and finance, but I think if that committee is reconvened, if we want to test it with the students and the committee, then certainly, Madam Chair, hopefully would be part of that. Yeah.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Board reports. I have nothing to report.
Madam Chair, the Finance and Facilities Committee did not meet to give us a report on the October financials, so there is no report at this time.
Thank you. And when will your next meeting be?
It'll be November 8th. Excuse me, the first meeting in December. We're in
December
November.
6th.
Boy,
December
time is
6th?
going.
Yes.
Is our next meeting, but when will the FNF be?
It'll be the morning of the next meeting.
And you will have a report for which month?
Well, hopefully for both.
Okay.
You won't have November? Okay, so
So October?
we'll only have October.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
That won't happen in the future, I hope, because we'll be back on our third Wednesday
Yeah, that's
schedule.
confusing. isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Butch Cato, report from the ACC Advisory Board.
Madam Chair, our strategic plan is completed, And so Dr. Brady Hammond will be doing, I think, a presentation at the board meeting December 6th to present their findings and for the Albany County campus. In fact, Brady was talking to me a little bit about they had an early sign up for spring semester that went really well. And they used the Halloween as the occasion to make it a pretty festive occasion and interesting. And in fact, Brady, if you wouldn't mind giving the numbers and your account of that.
I'll have you stand up, Brady, please. Thank you. There you go.
So again, this was an institution-wide thing, and it happened over here. It's Faculty-Student Connection Day, and the team over there decided they wanted to have a theme because it was Halloween. So they decided the theme should be a Harry Potter theme. And yeah, everyone got really into it. Costumes, everything. I can show you the photos later. But the numbers in terms of enrollments, which are traditionally not there on the first day, this morning we had 169 duplicated headcount and just over 46 FTE, which is about, I'd say, 15% of our current FTE at this point in the fall semester. So to have that many on day one over at ACC is a tremendous success. And it couldn't have been done without everyone pulling together, faculty, staff, everyone. It was really great to be a part of. And of course, the real effect is the intangible just sort of morale boost that took place on campus. Everyone had a real positive outcome of it. And we're already planning for April 3rd, I think, is when it is in the spring. So April 3rd, they want to do, well, off the record, I was told not to share this. They want to do a Grease theme, the movie, not the country. So leather jackets, not togas, but that will be, again, building towards that. But again, the numbers alone show that students are excited. We had 104 students show up, so we had even more just output on that. And yeah, it was really great. So if there are any questions, I can answer them, but I think the numbers speak for themselves, and the intangible, anyone on campus could speak for that.
It sounds like it was magical.
So, well, we could have used you last Tuesday. But yes, it was a really great event.
You are amazing. I think you're bringing lots of fun to the campus. Plus good work.
Again, this was the team over there. They had it put together. It was really just outstanding. So I was happy to be a part of it.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I guess trying to look at the schedule, or maybe if we can look at a schedule sometime in the spring to do maybe a joint meeting. That would be great.
We would
get
like
together
to
the
do
boards and with the advisory council. So
you, Lorraine.
Want to mention Wildtech?
Oh.
I do. You want?
Yeah, I think they might find that in.
Okay. What President Schaefer was referring to, in fact, Brady and I were talking on the ride over that we had just learned today that apparently Wildtech, our technical automotive college, is shutting down. And yeah, I guess it's owned by Zenith. And there's 21 campuses that, according to what we're learning, are closing down. And so the Wildtech campus in Laramie will be shutting down. We don't have a lot of specifics on it, other than maybe no new enrollment, we understand, will be taking place. And they're going to try and play through June or something like that with the present staff and enrollees there. So don't know what it might hold, but hopefully we'll find some opportunities there, either somebody to come in and buy them, or maybe even look at, who knows, community college type atmosphere. Certainly Wildtech, they've invested in a lot of buildings and infrastructure, dormitories. It's more of a campus than anything else. I mean, it's maybe more vocational workforce training kind of a setting, but certainly a campus setting. And so we'll just have to see what happens. But there might be, who knows, some partnerships or opportunities.
Great.
So
That's good news.
Madam Chair, if I remember right, Wildtech's on the highway that 3rd Street turns into. I can't remember. Is that right?
It used to be.
Oh, it
Yes,
used to
that's
be.
where it started. In fact, that's where it started, and then they moved to a new facility on West Laramie, off of
Oh,
Snowy Range Highway,
oh,
and where there's like probably a 250-acre complex, and they have about 4 or 5 buildings, and the buildings are probably 50 to 100,000 square foot. They have a state-of-the-art automotive or diesel technology
Really?
building. Their administrative offices are there, and then their dormitories that they
and it's up
built.
Snowy Range Road?
It's off of Snowy Range, actually.
Okay.
It's off of Adams, but it's
Oh,
not,
okay.
it's probably a quarter of a mile or so
Okay, wow, okay,
off of Colorado. So
thank
we'll
you.
see, yeah.
Madam Chair, Butch, did you say they closed or they're about to close?
They're about to close. They're shutting them down. No more enrollees. I understand that they're going to have their curriculum or program through June, and then
Get
phase
everybody
everything out.
graduated.
Hopefully they'll find a
Yeah.
suitor or something will happen over this course of the next 6-7 months. But
Okay, thank you for that news. Are you complete here with your great report?
Yes.
Or you have
got a
more?
Pretty good
I'm done.
report.
Student ex officio trustee, Mr. Derek Goldfuss. Hi, and please tell them about your tie, how you have many ties for your tie.
Oh, yes, I tied an Eldridge knot today.
I
Really
love it.
showy knot.
It's great.
It took quite a while. So the student government has a date for the next blood drive. This one will be held next semester early on. I believe it's the third week of next semester, will be February 5th. And we wanted to host one this semester, but we've been very busy with our late start and with all of what we've been doing. It's just been hectic. But next semester, we've got a lot of plans ironed out, and we're ready to drop a lot of our necessary events right then. We also have a coffee hour for the first week that we're finishing up the very final plans for that, to have that rolled out right away, so we can get our senators to have some exposure to the student body, and so we can get more practice with having these again, as the ASG used to do. We found these in their records, and we decided to bring them back because they had very good results.
And where will you do that?
We'll be doing that in the CCC during the first week.
Okay.
So we're looking at reserving the CCC and making sure we've got the budget down and the senators available. And then as far as progress we've made lately, we have accomplished unblocking all video games. We talked to Chad Marley from IT, and a number of our commuter students, myself included, were on campus for quite a while. I show up at 9:30 a.m. on every day, and I don't have class until 5:30 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that's because I carpool in with my friend. So while I may be able to do some SGA work on the side, I may be able to find something, homework to keep me busy, there's still a lot of time to pick up there. And so some video games can help fill that time. And video games were set to low priority because they're not quite academic, so they're still good for blowing off steam. It's a nice connection they've given us, 100 megabytes a second. So it's certainly still a very good connection, and it's a good way for students who are on campus without anything to do to relax a little and find something to do. We've also made progress with the recycling. We've been talking to Bill Zink from the physical plant, and we're looking at getting recycling in several areas on the main part of campus. And then we've also talked to CAB and the residence hall, and CAB is willing to bring a large blue bin to the residence hall, and we're looking at also getting them a blue dumpster near the hall so they can bring the recycling to something close to them. And we're awaiting progress on that. Recently, our VP stepped down and was replaced with Constance Woolheather. She's done a very good job of stepping up to the occasion. Earlier this semester, our secretary stepped down, and she stepped up to fill that position. And when our VP stepped down, she was there to help us out again. And then we are working to fill that secretary position as we speak. We have called for people to consider it. And next week on Tuesday, we will be selecting a new secretary. And then SVA has a memorial coming up 17th to the 22nd, 23rd to the 26th. That is for all the soldiers who have died since the beginning of the War on Terror, and student government will be helping with that.
May I ask a question about that? Because Kevin Yarborough was remembering our fallen national unveiling, and he said it was on next Friday. Do you
Yes.
know where that is and what time?
The unveiling, I believe it was 9 a.m.,
9 a.m.
but I can't remember whether it was the CCC or the Pathfinders ballroom, the A and B ballroom, I believe.
Okay, Vicki said she'll let us know. Thank you so much.
Okay, and that concludes my report.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions?
Madam Chair, it's in the ballroom. It's in Pathfinder.
It's in Pathfinder? Thank you so much. I would encourage as many to go as they can, please. Thank you. You kept me entertained. He's good with his tie. Election of officers, I've asked Dawn to present the slate of officers and positions that we want to fill. And Gay Woodhouse said that we could go ahead since we probably have no dissension on this. And I'll call for nominations for the floor anyway. But
Carol, may I ask a question? Don't we usually do this in December? It's not that, why are we doing it in November instead?
It was a new thing. I wanted to do it now because then by the time we get here in December, the people can go down and put their names on the forms that they have to do. And then the chair and the officers will just take their places at the table instead of doing it that night.
Madam Chair, may I give some more clarification?
Sure.
Tonight, we will be electing, however, the installation of the officers won't occur until December.
Oh, now I understand. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
At our chairman's wishes.
Got it.
Well, I think it'll simplify things, and that's what we're about here.
That makes sense then.
Okay.
Well, Madam Chair, as you indicated, I've been asked to give the nominating committee report. And the officers for the next year, beginning in December, would be Brad Barker, Chair, Carol Merrill, Vice Chair, Don Erickson, Treasurer, and Wendy Soto, Secretary. And I place these names in nomination for the officers that I listed.
Do I have any nominations from the floor? Do I have any nominations from the floor? Do I have any nominations from the floor? May I have a second, please?
I second. Was that a motion?
Yes.
Yes, that
Okay,
was a
yes,
motion.
then I second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is favorable.
Then continuing my report for the nominating committee, WAC representatives, and we always elect these individuals in December. So again, this will be election today and installed in December. Don Erickson and Bob Salazar. And I place those names for approval for representatives to WAC.
I appreciate that both of you gentlemen will be doing this job and traveling. Thank you. Are there any nominations from the floor? Are there any nominations from the floor? Are there any nominations from the floor? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Do we need a second?
A second, please. Who's seconding?
I'll second. Oh, did Brad second? Okay.
Brenda, you second. Did you already write it down?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
Brad
he
seconded.
beat me
All
to
those
it.
in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I don't say it. Anybody opposed?
Madam Chair, I also have ex officio representatives for the foundation, Carol Merrill, Brenda Little, and Jess Ketchum.
Will you accept the nomination? Thank you. I forgot to ask that earlier. Are there any nominations from the floor? Are there any nominations from the floor? Are there any nominations from the floor? May I have a second, please?
I second.
I got it right that time. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone not is opposed? Motion passes. Get it all, Vicki? Oh. Thank you, Don. I appreciate that very much. ACCT, National Legislative Summit in Washington, DC. Did you want to speak to that?
Yep, Madam Chair, members of the board, just got the notification and the gals in the office said I should see if anybody had any interest in attending this. Early bird registration goes up till December 16th. This is the ACCT's National Legislative Summit for the new trustees. It's essentially a conference similar to what you experienced in Vegas, except for this one is really focused around major legislative issues impacting the community colleges, and then you coordinate your visit to the congressional offices as well. I know that some of us have been there. Trustee Barker and I went a few years ago with that, but we didn't want to just assume that nobody wanted to attend, and so we thought we'd put it on the agenda.
I appreciate that. I went with John Kaiser the first year I went.
Are you going?
Is anyone interested in going? It's pretty much for new trustees.
Is it for new trustees?
Although anyone.
Oh, Madam Chair, I don't think that's correct. I don't think it's for new trustees. It's for all trustees. And I know there are trustees from the state of Wyoming who have been going there year after year after year. And as I understand it, and I'm not saying that in a derogatory way, I'm just making that as an observation. And that when they go there, they find it very satisfying. They get the latest legislative activities in higher education and specifically the colleges. And then they have the chance as a group to meet with the congressperson and the two senators. So it has some benefit. It depends on what we want to accomplish by sending one of our members there. You know, if we, like at the retreat, for example, if we find that there's some specific legislative activity at the federal level that we're very interested in, then it would be probably very useful for one of us to be there. So I think maybe at this point, we might want to give it a little thought. I don't know, when's the early bird by, what is it, December? 16th. December 16th, so we really have until then to make some decisions.
What are the dates again? I'm sorry.
11th to the 14th of February.
February 11th through 14th.
Yeah.
Okay.
How many of you have gone? Raise your hand, please.
Brad's gone.
More than once.
Wendy said that she cannot go. Of all the conferences that I've been to, this was the least valuable to me. Although I love being with John, but it was the least valuable to me. I think there were a few others that were much more valuable. And I think we have to be careful with our money, our trustee travel money. So I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, we don't have any money in the budget, but we could probably move things around if need be. I mean, we don't have for out-of-state travel money for this particular conference. However, we could probably move within our budget dollars to achieve that. But if there's a real good reason for someone to go, I think we can make it happen. But I would ask all of us to just kind of wait a little while and see what happens.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board, you might want to go out to the website, look through it, learn a little bit more about it, have a discussion, and then certainly if one of you decide that you would like to go and the board supports that, the president's office will be happy to coordinate the travel and everything.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Did Don say there was no money in the budget?
No money in the budget.
I didn't quite say it right.
Oh.
The out-of-state travel is depleted as a result of 4 people going to the conference and the ACCT conference in Vegas.
Okay.
But we still have funds in professional development, which is basically can use for either in-state or out-of-state.
And I think that conference for me was valuable, and Jess and Bob and Wendy went, and I thought that conference had value.
And you're going to give us a report on that at the January retreat.
Yes, sir. We are, thank you.
Keep your notes.
I kept my notes, but I think I gave most of them to Judy Hay. Thank you. Just look at your historical list of board motions, and next meeting's December 6th. I think for the folks that have been or will be taking office, I would like you to come a little bit early so that you can go and sign the paperwork for your offices. They ask that you do that. So please come a little early. The holiday gala is December 8th here at the college in the cafeteria, correct?
Pathfinder.
Done. Oh, it's in the Pathfinder? Oh, wonderful. Okay, thank you.
This meeting is the 6th.
The meeting is the 6th.
And Madam Chair, has a date been set for our retreat in January?
No, I think, why don't we do that during our pre-board meeting? You want to do that? Or do you want to ask everybody?
No, Madam Chair, members of the board, we'll work up some options for that and send it out to you, and we'll just pull the board and figure out which one works best.
Because I think people really like Friday. That's what, do people like to do a retreat on Friday? Does that work out for the people that work? We've done them on Saturdays, but I don't think people like to miss their Saturdays.
JAC, I think, starts like the 13th. Yeah.
Well, the reason I ask is I'm going to be gone the 14th through the 21st. So I would really like to attend the retreat.
Of January?
Yeah.
I think, Madam Chair, for the most part, we'll want to try to get this in probably before the 11th or 12th. If I remember correctly, the Joint Appropriations Committee kicks in, and then I know Trustee Ketchum, probably Trustee Barker, and I, possibly Trustee Toto could be tied up in that. So we'll shoot for maybe that first or early on that second week of January. But we can send out that Friday and a Saturday option and maybe another option and just see what people prefer.
Okay, great idea. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I will not be in attendance at the board meeting on December 6th. I need to be in Washington DC that week.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Could you stay there until February 11th and 14th?
I don't think we have the money for that.
If I didn't have any.
I figure she's going on her own night.
No, I got a Mexico trip in there and I gotta go to.
Any public comment? Not, may I have a motion for retiring into executive session, please?
I will move that we move into executive session to discuss a personnel matter.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to this meeting.